I am 26 years old, running on 3 hours of sleep after a 12-hour shift in the ER, and my father is leaning across a glass dining table, telling me to hand over $700,000. My grandfather has been dead for exactly 4 days. We haven't even had the funeral yet. But my parents aren't crying. They are calculating. My mother sits next to him, her hands folded over a silk blouse, telling me that signing over the money is just what family does. We have to protect the legacy, she says. I do not argue. I do not scream. I do not explain to them that Grandpa Leo left that money in a trust with my name on it for a very specific reason. Instead, I reach into my bag, pull out a sealed cream-colored envelope with the crest of a Miami law firm stamped on the back and slide it across the glass. My mother slices it open, expecting a simple legal release. She reads the first paragraph, and for the first time in my entire life, I watch her break down into raw, ugly tears. My name is Lucia Cooper. I am a nurse in Florida, and this is the story of how my own parents tried to steal my inheritance to cover up a federal crime, and how my grandfather's paper fortress made sure they lost everything. If this story resonates with you, please subscribe and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. But first, let me take you back to the suffocating heat of that Boca Raton dining room. It is a Thursday afternoon in July. The air conditioning is humming, keeping the Florida humidity pressed against the floor-to-ceiling windows. I am still in my scrubs. My feet ache from 12 hours in the trauma bay, a place where blood and broken bones make logical sense. You apply pressure, you stabilize, you heal. The room I am sitting in right now makes no sense at all. Derek. My father taps his fingers against the glass tabletop. He owns a luxury boat dealership down on the coast. He wears a watch that costs more than my car. Brenda. My mother hasn't looked me in the eye since I walked through the front door. They didn't ask if I wanted water. They didn't ask how I was holding up after losing the man who practically raised me while they were out chasing country club status. Derek just pushed a printed document toward me, a renunciation of assets. Sign it, Lucia, Derek says. It is a simple transfer. The lawyers just need your signature to bypass probate. We need to pool the assets to keep the dealership expanding. It is what Leo would have wanted for the family. The lie is so thin it is almost transparent. Leo despised the dealership. He was a retired marina owner who wore canvas shoes and smelled like salt and motor oil. He spent his last 5 years teaching me how to read contracts, so I would never end up like the people sitting across from me. I look at the document. Then I look at my mother. Family protects each other, Brenda adds, finally meeting my gaze. Her voice has that sharp, practiced edge she uses on waitstaff. Do not be difficult today. That is the first rule of surviving people like this. You give them silence. I do not justify my grief. I reach into my duffel bag. The heavy envelope from Victoria Reyes, Leo's estate attorney, feels warm in my hand. I set it on the table and push it toward Brenda. She takes it, a smug smile forming, thinking I have brought the signed bank release she asked for yesterday. She slides her manicured thumb under the seal, unfolds the heavy paper. Her eyes track across the first few lines. The smug smile falters. Her breath hitches, and the color drains from her face so fast she looks like a ghost sitting in a designer chair. Brenda drops the paper. Her hands are shaking. It is not a slight tremble. It is a loss of motor control kind of shake. She presses a manicured hand over her mouth, but a sound still escapes, a harsh, jagged sob. I watch her shoulders heave, and for a moment the ER nurse in me almost steps forward to assess her breathing, but I stay rooted to my chair. Brenda does not cry. The last time I saw water in my mother's eyes was 4 years ago when the Pinecrest Country Club temporarily suspended their membership over late dues. That was a social tragedy. This is something else entirely. This is the sound of a mirror being held up to a person who has spent 3 decades avoiding her own reflection. Derek leans in his brow, furrowing deep into his forehead. He asks her what it says, but she cannot answer. She just covers her face. The air conditioning hums above us, suddenly the loudest thing in the room. I know what the letter says. Victoria Reyes read it to me in her office yesterday afternoon. It is not a legal injunction. It contains zero legal jargon. Grandpa Leo wrote it by hand on a yellow legal pad 2 weeks before his heart gave out. Leo did not care about the optics of wealth. He built a marina from a single wooden dock. He smelled like diesel fuel salt spray and cheap sunscreen. He was the one who picked me up from middle school when Brenda forgot because she was at a charity luncheon planning committee. He was the one who taught me how to drive a stick shift in an empty boat trailer parking lot while my parents were in the Bahamas trying to network with investors. The letter Victoria sealed in that envelope was addressed specifically to Brenda. Leo wrote, "I watched you treat my granddaughter like an accessory for 26 years. You wanted a prop for your Christmas cards, not a child to raise. I am leaving her this money so she never has to rely on a woman who only loves conditionally. Do not ask her for a dime. She owes you nothing. You have already taken enough." Those words are what broke her, the undeniable written confirmation from her own father that he saw right through the gloss. Brenda spent her entire life curating an image of the perfect affluent matriarch. Leo took a pen and tore that image to shreds. Derek finally snatches the paper from the glass table. His eyes dart across Leo's slanted handwriting. His reaction is entirely different. The confusion morphs into a dark, rigid anger. The veins in his neck stand out against his crisp white polo shirt. He balls the heavy paper in his fist, crushing the last words his father-in-law ever wrote to them. He points a finger toward the front door. "Get out," he says. His voice is dangerously low. I do not move right away. I hold his gaze. "You heard me." Derek snaps, stepping toward me. The illusion of the concerned father evaporates into thin air, leaving behind the cold reality of a man who just lost a paycheck. "You bring this garbage into my house, disrespecting your mother days after my father-in-law dies. Get your things and get out of this house. We are done playing games with you." I stand up. I do not apologize. I turn my back on them and walk down the hallway to my childhood bedroom. The room looks exactly as it did when I left for college. Dusty equestrian trophies on a shelf, a pristine white bedspread, a room designed to look perfect for guests rather than lived in by a human being. I grab my canvas duffel bag. The zipper sticks a familiar grounded sound. I throw in 2 pairs of scrubs, a pair of jeans, and my grandfather's old dive watch, the only thing I actually care about in this house. The heavy metal feels cold and solid against my palm. I walk back down the hallway. Brenda is still sobbing at the glass table, her face hidden in her hands. Derek is standing over her, glaring at me as I cross the living room. I reach the front door, turn the brass handle, and step out into the blinding Florida heat. I do not slam the door. Slamming a door implies a conversation is still happening, an argument that wants to be finished. Closing it softly means the conversation is over. As I walk to my used Honda Civic, I think about the concept of blood. Society tells you that biological family is your foundation. But sometimes the biological family is just the earthquake that breaks your foundation apart. The people who share your DNA are often the ones who know exactly where to hit to cause maximum structural damage. They know your pressure points because they installed them. You have to build a found family to catch you when the floor falls out. I get into the driver's seat. The steering wheel is burning hot. I turn the key blast, the AC, and merge onto Interstate 75 heading north toward Tampa. The drive takes nearly 4 hours. The highway stretches out a flat ribbon of asphalt cutting through the swamp and endless retail plazas. I do not turn on the radio. I just let the hum of the engine wash over me. The adrenaline from the dining room slowly leaches out of my system, replaced by a hollow ache in my ribs. I survive the ambush, but I know Derek and Brenda will not let $700,000 walk away without a fight. By the time I reach my small second-floor apartment, it is well past dark. The streetlights outside buzz a steady rhythm. My apartment is modest, furnished with thrift store finds and nursing textbooks, but it is mine. No one here demands a performance. I drop my duffel bag on the floor, kick off my shoes, and collapse onto my mattress. I let the sheer exhaustion of the last 4 days pull me under. I do not dream. I just sink into the dark. The sunlight hitting my face wakes me up. That and the relentless vibration against my nightstand. I blink, rubbing the sleep from my eyes, and reach for my phone. The screen is bright, displaying a number that makes my stomach drop. 47 missed calls. They are not from Brenda. They are not from Derek. Every single missed call is from my 20-year-old sister, Brooke. Brooke is a junior at a private university in Miami. She is the golden child, the one who inherited Brenda's talent for smiling through teeth and wearing clothes that cost more than my monthly rent. We speak maybe twice a year, usually on birthdays or forced holiday dinners. 47 calls is not an accident. It is a panic attack. Before I can even process the notifications, the screen lights up with an incoming call. It is her again. I hit accept and press the phone to my ear. Lucia, she breathes. Her voice is frantic, hitching in her throat. The polished sorority girl facade is gone. What is it, I ask, sitting up on the edge of the bed. My feet touch the cold floorboards. You have to help, Brooke cries. Her words are tumbling out, stepping on each other in her rush to get them into the open. There is a man here, at the house in Boca. He just showed up. He is banging on the patio windows, and he told Dad if he does not pay him by Friday, he is going to take the boat. Lucia. Dad is locking all the doors. What is going on? I stare at the glowing screen for 3 seconds before swiping accept. Brooke is 20 years old. She has spent her entire existence insulated in a bubble of private tutors, paid internships, and designer handbags. Real, unvarnished panic is not an emotion she knows how to process. Lucia, she gasps. There is a man at the house. I sit up straight. My bare feet hit the cold wood floor of my bedroom. What man, Brooke? Call the police. No, we cannot call the police, she whispers, her voice trembling so hard it breaks. Dad said no cops. He is pacing the kitchen. Mom is locking the patio doors. The guy just stood on the lawn by the pool and told Dad the grace period is over. He said if he does not get the wire transfer by Friday, he is taking the inventory. I stand up and walk into my small kitchen. The ER nurse training overrides my exhaustion. You manage the panic before you manage the wound. Brooke, slow down, I say, keeping my tone level. Did he touch anyone? No, she says, sniffing loudly. But he stared right at me through the glass. Lucia. Dad is ruined. He owes a holding company in Miami over $500,000. He has been moving money around for months trying to cover it, but the accounts are empty. They are going to take the dealership. They are going to take the house. The pieces snap into place with a sickening clarity. Derek owns Coastal Prestige Yachts. If you look at the company Instagram page, it is an endless feed of drone shots showing multi-million-dollar center consoles cutting through crystal blue water. He wears crisp linen shirts and smiles next to minor local celebrities. But the marine industry is brutal. Inventory sits for months. Maintenance costs bleed operational budgets dry. When traditional banks stop lending to you, you do not downsize. Not if you are Derek Cooper. You maintain the illusion. You turn to private equity groups operating out of high-rise offices in Brickell. Lenders who hide behind shell companies. Lenders who charge interest rates that belong in a mafia movie. Lenders who send men to your swimming pool when you miss a payment. The sudden urgency at the dining room table yesterday, the pre-printed renunciation form, the lofty talk of preserving the family legacy. It was all a desperate orchestrated performance. The $700,000 Grandpa Leo left in my trust was not an inheritance to them. It was a life raft. Derek and Brenda were drowning, and they planned to use my clean money to pay off loan sharks and keep their luxury charade afloat. Why are you calling me Brooke, I ask. The question hangs heavy in the quiet of my apartment. She pauses. The frantic, terrified energy shifts, settling into something far more rehearsed. Because you have the money, Lucia. Dad told me about the trust. It is not a bank account, Brooke. It is a trust. And Grandpa Leo made his wishes very clear. The tears stop. The vulnerable little sister act evaporates, replaced by a cold, familiar edge. Do you hear yourself right now? Brooke snaps. Her voice suddenly sounds exactly like Brenda holding court at the country club. Dad is going to lose everything. He could get hurt. And you are sitting in Tampa hoarding a check that does not even belong to you. It has my name on it, I say quietly. Only because Grandpa was getting senile at the end and wanted to punish Mom, she counters, firing the words like weapons. You know that money was supposed to keep the business running. Do you know what happens to me if the dealership goes under? My tuition is due next week, my lease on the apartment in Coral Gables, the car payments. If you do not give Dad the money, my life is ruined. I will have to drop out. Let me explain my sister's reality. Brooke is a junior at the University of Miami studying public relations. Her entire lifestyle is funded by the Coastal Prestige Yachts corporate account. Her Range Rover is written off as a company vehicle. Her luxury apartment is leased under a subsidiary. She does not know how to budget, how to apply for a student loan, or how to work a double shift on her feet until her spine aches. Her definition of ruin is trading a designer lifestyle for a normal one. She is not calling me because she is worried about Derek facing physical harm. She is calling me because her credit card was probably declined at a boutique this morning, and Derek finally told her why the plastic stopped working. I realize in this moment that Brooke is not an ally reaching out for comfort. She is a deployed asset. Derek and Brenda sent her. They know they burnt their bridge with me yesterday when they ordered me out of the house, so they sent the younger sibling. They wanted to locate my emotional weak spot. They figured the dutiful older sister would fold if the youngest played the victim. Brooke, I say, staring out my kitchen window at the empty parking lot. You are an adult. If Dad cannot pay your tuition, you will have to take out loans. Or get a job, just like I did. You are so selfish, she spits back. You have always been jealous of this family. You moved away and acted like you were better than us just because you wipe bedpans for a living. You are going to let Dad get destroyed over some misplaced grudge. The venom in her voice is impressive. It is a perfect, seamless replication of our mother. The villains in this story are not operating out of some grand, calculating genius. They are operating out of pathetic, naked desperation. They built a house of cards the wind blew, and now they are demanding I lie down so they can use my body to prop up the collapsing walls. Financial ruin is their fault, but they are trying to twist it into my guilt. I am not giving Derek the trust, I say. Tell him to call his lawyers. Tell him to sell the house. You cannot do this, Lucia. We are family. You owe us. I owe you nothing. Dad says the lawyers can freeze it anyway. She argues, her voice rising in pitch, slipping back into a frantic rhythm. He says if you do not agree right now to transfer the funds to his operational account, he is going to take you to court. Just say you will transfer it, Lucia. Just say you agree to the loan. Say it. She is pushing too hard. The phrasing is too specific, too legal. Just say you agree to the loan. I hold the phone away from my ear for a fraction of a second. I listen to the dead air behind her voice. There is no ambient noise, no wind from an open window, no sound of Brenda pacing in the background. It is entirely too quiet. Then I hear it. A distinct mechanical click echoing on the line, followed by a faint rhythmic electronic beep. Brooke is not calling me from her bedroom in a panic. She is calling me on a speakerphone. And she is not alone. She is secretly recording the conversation. They are trying to goad me into a verbal agreement, a recorded statement acknowledging the money is a family asset to use as ammunition in a legal dispute. Brooke. I say, my voice dropping an octave, losing any trace of sisterly concern. Are you recording this? The silence on the other end is deafening. For 2 full seconds, the only sound is that faint electronic hum. Then the facade cracks entirely. The terrified college student vanishes, and the spoiled enforcer steps forward. You are making a huge mistake, Lucia. Her tone is sharp, dripping with venom. Dad has lawyers who deal with millions of dollars every day. They are going to drag you through court until there is nothing left of that trust to defend. You are going to lose anyway, and the whole family is going to hate you for it. I do not raise my voice. I do not engage with the threat. I just deliver a fact. Tell Dad to save his legal fees. He owes enough people already. Brooke hangs up. I set the phone down on the counter. The kitchen feels too quiet now. I pour myself a glass of water, my hands remarkably steady. There is a specific kind of heartbreak in realizing your sibling has chosen to be a foot soldier for the very people who ruined them. Brooke and I grew up in the same house, but we lived in two different realities. I saw the performative wealth for what it was, an empty shell that required constant, exhausting maintenance. Brooke saw the shell and thought it was a castle. Now she is willing to help tear me down just to keep her room in the tower. The rest of the weekend is a blur of anxiety. I expect Derek to show up at my door. I expect Brenda to send one of her unhinged multi-paragraph text messages, but nothing happens. Sunday passes in total silence. By Monday morning, I am desperate for the distraction of the emergency room. The ER is my sanctuary. It sounds crazy to call a trauma center a safe place, but to me, it is the only environment that makes sense. The chaos here is structured. When a patient codes, there is a protocol. You push epinephrine, you start compressions. You follow the algorithm until a heartbeat returns or the doctor calls time of death. Everything is measurable. Broken femurs show up on X-rays. Sepsis registers in blood cultures. There is no hidden agenda in a laceration. You clean it, you stitch it, you move on. The rules of physics and biology govern this space, not the twisted logic of a Boca Raton country club. I am 3 hours into my shift. I have already triaged 2 car accidents and a suspected stroke. I am at the nurse's station updating a chart when the sliding glass doors at the ambulance bay hiss open. It is not paramedics. It is a man in a cheap suit carrying a manila envelope. He walks straight up to the security desk, points in my direction, and walks over. "Lucia Cooper?" he asks. "Yes," I reply, capping my pen. He hands me the envelope, says "You have been served," and turns around, walking back out the sliding doors before I can even process what he just said. My heart gives a hard, uncomfortable thump against my ribs. I look down at the heavy packet. The return address belongs to a law firm in Fort Lauderdale. Derek's lawyers. They did not waste any time. I grab the packet and step into an empty supply closet, closing the door behind me. The air in here smells like sterile packaging and rubbing alcohol. I tear open the flap and pull out a stack of legal documents stapled together. I expect a lawsuit contesting the trust. I expect a demand letter for a loan. I do not expect what I'm actually reading. The header on the first page stops the breath in my throat. Petition for temporary conservatorship. I read the words again. Conservatorship. My parents are not suing me for the money. They are suing me for my autonomy. I scan the paragraphs, my eyes jumping over the dense legalese to find the core arguments. Derek and Brenda Cooper are petitioning the state of Florida to take emergency control of my finances, my medical decisions, and my legal rights. The justification is laid out in bullet points below. They claim I am suffering from a severe psychological break following the death of my grandfather. They claim my behavior has become erratic and hostile. They argue that receiving a windfall of $700,000 while in this unstable state presents an immediate danger to my well-being and that I lack the mental capacity to manage the assets. They are trying to declare me legally incompetent. It is a brilliant, terrifying strategy. If they contest the trust directly, Victoria Reyes would crush them in probate court. The document Leo signed is ironclad. But if they take control of me, they automatically take control of the trust. They bypass Leo's wishes by rendering me a legal non-entity. They intend to step in as my conservators drain the trust to pay off the loan shark circling the dealership and then quietly release me back into the world once the money is gone. The sheer audacity of it makes my stomach turn. They are willing to destroy my reputation, my independence, and my sanity to save a boat dealership. I flip to the second page. A conservatorship petition requires evidence. A judge will not grant temporary control over an adult based solely on the word of angry parents. There has to be a medical evaluation. There has to be an affidavit from a licensed professional attesting to my instability. I find the affidavit on the third page. It is a sworn statement detailing my supposed erratic behavior, my deep depression, and my inability to make rational decisions. The report is written with clinical precision, describing a woman who is completely unmoored from reality. I scroll down to the signature line at the bottom of the page. I expect the name of a hired gun psychiatrist in Miami, someone Derek paid off. Instead, the name typed below the signature line makes the sterile walls of the supply closet spin. Dr. Richard Vance, Chief of Staff, Tampa General Hospital. My hospital. My boss. I lean back against shelves stacked with saline bags, struggling to pull air into my lungs. Dr. Vance has never treated me. I have spoken to him maybe 3 times in my entire career here, but Derek and Brenda play golf at the same country club where Dr. Vance holds a corporate membership. They did not just hire a doctor, they leveraged a networking connection to secure a fraudulent medical document from the highest authority in the building where I currently work. They brought the war into my sanctuary. I am still leaning against the shelving in the sterile supply closet, holding the conservatorship petition with Dr. Vance's signature, when the overhead public address system crackles to life. Lucia Cooper, report to Human Resources immediately. The mechanical voice echoes through the emergency department. The timing is not a coincidence. This is a synchronized, calculated strike. Derek and Brenda did not just file legal paperwork in a vacuum. They coordinated the delivery of the court petition with an internal ambush at my workplace. I slide the heavy legal packet back into the manila envelope, tuck it under my arm, and push the supply closet door open. The walk from the trauma bay to the administrative wing on the 3rd floor feels like crossing a frozen lake. Every step is deliberate. I leave behind the chaotic, vibrant energy of the ER, the beeping monitors, the smell of iodine, the rush of saving lives. I enter a world of beige walls, gray industrial carpet, and muted fluorescent lighting. The Human Resources Director is a woman named Diane. She sits behind a sprawling laminate desk devoid of any personal photographs or warmth. Next to her sits Helen, my nursing supervisor. Helen is a veteran trauma nurse who usually looks me in the eye. Today she is studying the grain of the conference table, her shoulders hunched in a posture of defeat. Dr. Vance is noticeably absent. Architects of destruction rarely stick around to watch the building fall. "Sit down, Lucia," Diane says, gesturing to the uncomfortable fabric chair opposite her desk. I take a seat. I place the manila envelope on my lap, keeping my hands resting lightly on top of it. I do not fidget. Diane slides a single sheet of paper across the desk. The bold header reads, "Notice of Mandatory Administrative Leave. We received a formal complaint regarding your conduct." Diane begins her voice practicing that neutral corporate tone designed to strip away all humanity. The Chief of Staff submitted an internal report this morning. The report alleges that you have been exhibiting severe signs of psychological distress and erratic behavior following a recent bereavement. She pauses, tapping a pen against her legal pad. But the behavioral concern is only the secondary issue. The primary issue is a diversion allegation. We received a credible tip that you have been skimming Schedule II narcotics from the Pyxis machine over the last 4 shifts. Specifically, fentanyl and Dilaudid. The report suggests you are self-medicating to cope with your grief. The air leaves the room. The silence is so heavy it rings in my ears. Stealing narcotics is the cardinal sin of nursing. It is not just a firing offense, it is a career execution. An accusation of drug diversion triggers an automatic report to the Board of Nursing. It triggers a DEA investigation. It leads to the permanent revocation of your license and potential criminal charges. I look at Helen. She finally meets my gaze, her expression tight with unspoken apology. She knows I am a meticulous nurse. She knows my drug counts always match. But the Chief of Staff filed the report, which means the bureaucratic machinery of the hospital must grind forward regardless of the truth. Derek and Brenda are brilliant in their cruelty. The conservatorship petition was the legal trap, but this is the siege. A suspended nurse with a pending federal drug investigation cannot afford to hire an attorney to fight a trust fund battle. They are cutting off my supply lines. They are trying to starve me out. They know my nursing license is my entire identity. If I surrender the $700,000, I know exactly what will happen. Derek will make a phone call to his golf buddy, Dr. Vance. The hospital will mysteriously find a clerical error in the drug logs. The diversion accusation will be quietly dropped as a misunderstanding. It is extortion wrapped in a patient safety protocol. Surrender the money or lose the only career you have ever cared about. Do you have anything to say? Lucia Diane asks, her pen hovering over the paper. The emergency room protocol hardwires you to suppress panic. You do not bleed on the floor. You triage the wound. I look at Diane, and I realize defending myself in this beige room is a waste of oxygen. Diane has already made her decision. The paperwork is already printed. Screaming about my father's loan sharks or my mother's country club connections will only make me look exactly like the unstable, erratic woman Dr. Vance described in his affidavit. They want me to lose my temper. They want a documented outburst to add to their conservatorship filing. I will not give them the satisfaction. I stand up. I reach up to the collar of my scrubs and unclip my hospital ID badge. The plastic snaps cleanly off the fabric. I place the badge gently on the center of Diane's desk. You can audit the Pyxis machine. I say, my voice steady, cold, and quiet. You can run my drug screens. You will find nothing. I am leaving now. I turn my back on them and walk out of the office. I do not look back at Helen. I navigate the maze of administrative hallways, take the elevator down to the ground floor, and walk out through the sliding glass doors into the blinding midday sun. The heat radiating off the employee parking lot asphalt hits me like a physical blow. My sanctuary is gone. My parents reached inside the one safe place I built for myself and poisoned the well. I unlock my used Honda Civic, climb into the driver's seat, and grip the steering wheel. I do not cry. Crying is a luxury for people who have a safety net. I merge onto Interstate 75 South, turning my back on Tampa, aiming the car straight toward Miami. It is a 4-hour drive through the heart of the state. The flat green expanse of the Everglades rushes past my windows. The rhythmic hum of the tires on the asphalt gives me time to think. I think about the years I spent working night shifts as a nursing assistant, eating ramen noodles in the break room, studying anatomy textbooks until my eyes blurred. I did that while Brooke was getting spray tans for sorority formals paid for by Derek's fraudulent dealership accounts. Nursing was never just a paycheck to me. It was my escape velocity. It was the proof that I could survive in the real world without asking Derek and Brenda for a single dime. They know this. That is why they targeted my license. They want to break my pride before they break my bank account. By the time the Miami skyline rises on the horizon, a cluster of glass and steel cutting into the blue sky, the shock has burned off entirely. What remains is a cold, crystallized anger. I take the Brickell Avenue exit, navigating the heavy traffic, until I pull into the underground parking garage of a high-rise office building. The law firm of Reyes & Associates occupies the 32nd floor. The lobby is a study in intimidation. Polished marble floors, frosted glass walls, and a receptionist who looks like she steps off a runway. I am still wearing my hospital scrubs, carrying a wrinkled manila envelope, but I do not shrink. I give the receptionist my name. She makes a brief phone call and nods toward a set of double oak doors. Victoria Reyes does not wait in the lobby. She waits in her office. I walk in. The room offers a sweeping, unobstructed view of Biscayne Bay, but the most commanding thing in the space is Victoria herself. She is in her late 50s, wearing a sharp charcoal suit. Her dark hair is pulled back into a severe knot. She is not a warm, emotional family attorney who holds your hand and passes the tissue box. Victoria is a legal surgeon who specializes in high-net-worth estate litigation. My grandfather hired her because she has ice water in her veins. "Have a seat, Lucia," she says, gesturing to a leather chair across from her massive mahogany desk. I sit down. I do not offer small talk. I open the manila envelope and pull out the petition for temporary conservatorship. I slide it across the polished wood. Then I reach into my pocket, unfold the notice of mandatory administrative leave from the hospital, and slide that right next to it. They are claiming I am mentally incompetent to control the trust I tell her, keeping my posture rigid. Derek had the chief of staff at my hospital sign a fraudulent medical affidavit. 2 hours later, that same doctor filed a fake report claiming I am stealing fentanyl from the emergency room. I am suspended. If the Board of Nursing takes action, I lose my license forever. They are trying to destroy my life, so I have no choice but to hand over the money. I brace myself for her reaction. I expect outrage. I expect her to pick up the phone and start yelling at a judge. I expect shock at the sheer depravity of parents attacking their own daughter's medical license. Victoria Reyes looks down at the two documents. She reads the header of the conservatorship petition. She reads the hospital suspension notice. Her expression does not change. She does not gasp. She does not blink. She reaches up calmly, removes her reading glasses, and folds them on the desk. Then she reaches down to her locked bottom drawer. I hear the click of a key turning. She pulls out a thick, heavy black leather binder and drops it onto the mahogany desk with a resounding thud. Your grandfather told me they would try exactly this. I stare at the black leather binder resting on the polished mahogany desk. It looks like a normal piece of office stationery, but in Victoria Reyes's office paper is a weapon. I look from the binder to Victoria. Her expression remains as smooth and unreadable as the glass windows looking out over Biscayne Bay. My grandfather knew they would try to steal my nursing license, I ask. My voice sounds hollow, struggling to catch up to the reality of the room. He did not know the exact method, Victoria replies, folding her hands over the leather cover, but he knew the players. Your grandfather was a self-made man. He built a marina out of nothing. You do not survive 40 years in the South Florida boating industry without learning how to spot a shark in shallow water. He knew your father was drowning in debt. And he knew that when desperate men run out of options, they attack the most vulnerable target in the room. She flips the binder open. The pages are thick, organized with meticulously labeled color-coded tabs. Let me explain what this is, Victoria says, her tone shifting into a sharp clinical gear. When Leo came to me 18 months ago, his heart was already failing. Most clients in his position want a simple will. They want to sign a piece of paper, hand out their assets, and focus on their remaining time. Leo refused to do that. He told me his son-in-law was a financial predator and his daughter was a willing accomplice. He said leaving you a standard inheritance would be like throwing blood in the water. So we built a fortress. Victoria turns to the first tab. She slides a flat silver flash drive across the desk, stopping it right next to my hospital suspension notice. Derek is trying to establish a conservatorship by claiming you are mentally unfit to manage your own affairs, Victoria explains. It is a common strategy in hostile estate takeovers. If a judge declares you incapacitated, your parents step in as your legal guardians, granting them total access to your bank accounts. But Leo anticipated a capacity challenge. She taps the flash drive. The morning Leo signed the irrevocable trust, granting you the $700,000, he did not just sign it in front of a notary. I brought in a board-certified forensic psychiatrist. We filmed a 2-hour evaluation. Leo answered questions about his mental state, his financial decisions, and his explicit reasons for excluding Derek and Brenda from the estate. He stated on camera, under penalty of perjury, that he expected Derek to attempt a hostile legal maneuver against you. He instructed me to use that recording to invalidate any future claims regarding the estate distribution. I look at the silver drive. My chest tightens. While I was working night shifts, assuming my grandfather was resting, he was sitting in front of a camera building a shield for me to use after he was gone. But that recording protects his state of mind. I point out, tracing the edge of the desk. Derek is attacking my state of mind. He has a sworn affidavit from my chief of staff claiming I am unstable. Victoria smiles. It is a cold, razor-thin smile that makes me profoundly grateful she is sitting on my side of the desk. An affidavit obtained through a country club favor is tissue paper in a federal courtroom, Victoria says dismissively. Derek filed for a temporary conservatorship, hoping you would panic and settle before a judge actually reviewed the evidence. It is a bluff, a desperate stall tactic designed to freeze you in place. Even if Derek successfully bribed a judge to grant the conservatorship, it would not matter. She turns to the second tab in the binder and points to a highlighted paragraph dense with legal formatting. I drafted a specific poison pill into the trust document, she continues. It is a protective trust provision. If any court appoints a guardian or conservator over you, the trust automatically locks. The distribution of funds is immediately halted, and control of the principal defaults to a neutral corporate fiduciary bank located in Delaware. Derek could declare you legally comatose, and he still would not be able to touch a single dime of that $700,000. The back door is dead bolted. The sheer relief that washes over me is almost a physical weight lifting off my shoulders. For 4 days, I have been fighting a guerrilla war against my own family, dodging ambushes and absorbing blows. Sitting in this office listening to Victoria dismantle their strategy with a few pieces of paper is the first time I have been able to take a full breath. The biological family broke the foundation, but the competent outsider is rebuilding it with reinforced steel. It is a profound grounding comfort to realize that while I was isolated and working myself to the bone, I was never actually unprotected. Leo was standing guard the entire time. He just used a lawyer to do it. However, Victoria adds, closing the binder and leaning forward. Her voice loses its academic detachment. Playing defense is no longer sufficient. She picks up the notice of mandatory administrative leave from the hospital, holding it up by the corner as if it were contaminated. The conservatorship is a nuisance lawsuit, she says. It is designed to generate legal fees and induce panic. But this suspension is a live grenade. Derek targeted your nursing license because he knows it is the source of your independence. If we ignore this internal hospital report, the Board of Nursing will launch a formal inquiry within 30 days. A narcotic diversion charge will follow you for the rest of your life, regardless of whether you are ever convicted. We cannot just wait for Derek to magically withdraw the complaint. We have to go on the offensive, and we have to do it with overwhelming force. How do we do that, I ask, leaning in, the fatigue in my bones replaced by a surge of adrenaline. We hit the architect of the lie, Victoria replies smoothly. We are going to formally subpoena Dr. Richard Vance. We will demand the immediate preservation of all his electronic communications, including text messages, private emails, and phone logs between him, Derek Cooper, and Brenda Cooper over the last 90 days. We will file a tortious interference and defamation lawsuit against the Chief of Staff personally, and we will copy the hospital legal department. When Dr. Vance realizes he is facing a personal malpractice and fraud lawsuit for doing a favor for a golfing buddy, his loyalty to your father will evaporate overnight. I nod, my confidence returning, hardening into something sharp and resilient. I want to fight them, I say. I want to clear my name entirely. Victoria studies me for a long moment, evaluating my posture, my tone, and my resolve. She is looking for any lingering trace of the obedient daughter. She finds none. Good, Victoria says softly, because clearing your name is only the first step. To permanently stop Derek and Brenda, you need to understand exactly what kind of war you are actually fighting. She reaches into her locked bottom drawer one more time. She does not pull out another pristine legal document. She pulls out a battered, unmarked manila folder and sets it squarely in front of me on the mahogany desk. When Leo realized Derek was experiencing severe liquidity issues at the boat dealership, he did not just ask me to draft a protective trust, Victoria explains. Leo wanted to know the exact layout of the battlefield. He wanted to know exactly how deep the water was before he sent you out to swim in it. So a year before he passed away, your grandfather hired a private investigator. She taps the unmarked folder with her index finger. He did not hire a standard domestic detective who takes photos through telephoto lenses. He hired a former forensic accountant from the Department of Justice, a man who specializes in unraveling offshore shell companies and corporate fraud. I stare at the unmarked folder. The air in the office suddenly feels very cold. The loan sharks, I say, remembering Brooke's frantic phone call. The men showing up at the house in Boca Raton demanding wire transfers. That is what the investigator found. Victoria shakes her head slowly. Her dark eyes lock onto mine, and the professional detachment is entirely gone, replaced by a grim, serious warning. Your father does not just owe money to loan sharks, she says, her voice dropping to a low, quiet register. He has been doing something much worse. I stare at the unmarked folder resting on the polished mahogany desk. The air in the office feels suddenly thin. Victoria opens the cover and slides a thick stack of financial records toward me. I am an emergency room nurse. I read metabolic panels, cardiac rhythms, and toxicology reports. I do not read corporate balance sheets. But the documents Victoria lays out in front of me do not require an advanced degree in finance to understand. They require basic arithmetic and a baseline understanding of human greed. Look at the top page, Victoria instructs, tapping a crisp sheet of paper with her pen. It is a commercial loan agreement from a regional bank headquartered in Georgia. The loan is for $2.4 million. The asset acting as collateral for the loan is a 68-foot luxury yacht. The borrower is not a person. It is a limited liability company registered to a post office box in Delaware. Now look at the second page, Victoria says, sliding another document right next to the first one. This is a different commercial loan agreement. This one originates from a credit union in South Carolina. The loan amount is for $2.2 million. I scan the details comparing the two pages. The asset acting as collateral on the second loan is the exact same 68-foot yacht. The vessel identification numbers match perfectly. The make, the model, and the year are identical. I look up at Victoria. I do not understand how a boat dealership can sell the same boat to two different banks. They do not sell it, Victoria explains, leaning back in her leather chair. The marine industry operates on something called floor plan financing. Dealerships borrow money from lenders to purchase their showroom inventory. When a customer buys a boat, the dealership pays back the lender and keeps the profit margin. Your father bypassed the customer entirely. She points her pen at the Delaware company listed on the paperwork. Derek created phantom buyers using out-of-state shell companies. He took out a multi-million-dollar loan from the bank in Georgia to purchase the yacht for his inventory. Then he took the exact same vessel identification number, doctored the title paperwork, and secured a second loan from the credit union in South Carolina for the very same boat. He pocketed the cash from the second loan to cover the operating losses of coastal prestige yachts. It is a practice known in the industry as double financing. It is textbook federal wire fraud, and he did not just do it once. Victoria spreads out half a dozen similar pairs of documents across the desk. He has been running this scheme for at least 3 years. Every time the dealership bled cash, he fabricated another shell company and double-financed another luxury center console to cover the deficit. He built a pyramid scheme out of fiberglass and fraudulent titles. I sit back in my chair. The image of my father pacing the kitchen, terrified of a loan shark standing by his swimming pool, takes on a much darker context. The men demanding wire transfers are just the bottom feeders. The real threat is the United States government. The federal auditors are already circling. Victoria continues, her voice clinical and precise. 2 of the out-of-state banks have requested physical audits of the inventory acting as their collateral. Derek is stalling them. He claims the yachts are currently located at an offshore maintenance facility in the Bahamas, undergoing repairs. But you can only stall a bank audit for so long before they send a field inspector to verify the hull numbers in person. When the inspectors realize the boats do not exist, the banks call the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I look down at the incorporation documents for the shell companies. The registered agent is a generic corporate law firm, but the chief financial officer listed on the state tax filings is a name I know intimately. Brenda Cooper. My mother is not a passive bystander. She is not a naive wife turning a blind eye to her husband's failing business. She is the listed financial officer of the fraudulent entities. While she was sipping mimosas at the Pinecrest Country Club, complaining to her friends about the quality of the golf course, landscaping she was signing, falsified federal loan applications. The entire Boca Raton lifestyle, the designer clothes, the luxury SUVs, the tuition payments for Brooke, is funded by a massive criminal enterprise. Victoria watches me process the information. She understands the exact moment the final puzzle piece falls into place. She explains the true purpose of the $700,000. It was never about preserving a family legacy. It was not even about paying back the immediate loan sharks. The trust money was a designated escape fund. Derek and Brenda need clean, untraceable cash to pay off the bank auditors demanding to see the missing yachts, Victoria says. They need enough financial runway to buy time, liquidate whatever legitimate assets they have left, and flee the jurisdiction before the federal indictments drop. They plan to drain your trust, pack their bags, and disappear. The chilling clarity hits me like a physical drop in temperature. If I had listened to Brooke on the phone yesterday, if I had caved to the guilt trips, if I had signed that renunciation form at the glass dining table and wired the trust funds into Derek's operational account, I would not just be broke today. My clean inheritance would have commingled with stolen federal funds. The moment the FBI raided coastal prestige yachts and seized the accounting ledgers, my name would be tied directly to the fraudulent wire transfers. Prosecutors track the flow of capital. They look at who injects money into a criminal enterprise right before it collapses. I would have been flagged as a co-conspirator. I would be charged as an accessory after the fact to federal wire fraud. My nursing license would not just be suspended by a corrupt hospital chief of staff. It would be revoked permanently by a federal judge. My parents were not just trying to steal my money. They were perfectly willing to let me go down with their sinking ship. They would have boarded an international flight, leaving me to sit in a federal holding cell, answering questions about boats I had never seen and bank accounts I had never opened. They intended to use my future as a human shield against a federal prison sentence. The betrayal transcends anything I thought them capable of. A bad parent ignores you. A toxic parent manipulates you. A monster uses you as collateral. I stare at the documents on the desk. The sting of the hospital suspension and the hurt of my sister's recorded phone call vanish entirely. The emotions burn away, leaving nothing behind but a cold, calculating survival instinct. We are not just fighting a probate dispute anymore, Victoria says, gathering the documents and returning them to the unmarked folder. We are dealing with desperate people facing decades in federal custody. They will not stop until they have the money, or until they are stopped by force. I look her in the eye. Tell me how we stop them. Victoria pulls a fresh legal pad from her drawer. She uncaps her fountain pen. We do not just threaten Dr. Vance with a medical malpractice suit. She begins mapping out the counter-offensive. We leverage the private investigator file. We draft a formal notification to Derek's legal counsel. We inform them that we are aware of the double financing scheme and the impending federal audits. We give them a hard deadline to withdraw the conservatorship petition and retract the fraudulent hospital complaint, or we proactively forward the entire investigator file to the Financial Crimes Division of the FBI. It is a ruthless strategy. We hold the detonator to their entire life. We dictate the terms of their surrender. As Victoria starts listing the specific legal statutes we will cite in the demand letter, a sharp vibration against my thigh interrupts the quiet hum of the office. I ignore it for a second, keeping my focus on Victoria. But the vibration does not stop. It pulses in a rapid, urgent sequence. 3 short bursts, a pause, and 3 short bursts again. I reach into the pocket of my scrubs and pull out my phone. It is a push notification from the security application tied to the doorbell camera at my apartment complex in Tampa. The alert banner stretches across my lock screen. Motion detected at front door. I swipe the notification. The screen goes black for a fraction of a second as the application connects to the network. Then, the live video feed buffers and snaps into crystal clear high definition. I am looking at the narrow, dimly lit hallway outside my second-floor apartment. A man is standing on my welcome mat. He is wearing a dark baseball cap pulled low over his forehead and a gray hooded sweatshirt. He is not knocking. He is not ringing the doorbell. He is holding a flat steel crowbar in his right hand. I watch the screen in real time as he wedges the curved edge of the crowbar into the seam between my front door and the wooden door frame. He leans his body weight against the steel tool, applying silent, steady pressure to break the deadbolt. The hallway outside my apartment is painted a dull mustard yellow. Under the harsh fluorescent light of the complex, the security camera feed washes out the colors, but the details are razor sharp. I watch the screen of my phone as the man wedges the curved steel edge of the crowbar deeper into the doorframe. The metal scrapes against the deadbolt casing. He leans his shoulder into the wood, using his body weight for leverage, forcing the structural frame to groan and splinter. As he shifts his weight, the dark hood of his sweatshirt slips back just an inch. The motion sensor light above my door clicks on, casting a brilliant glare directly across his face. It is Derek, my father. A man who spends $300 on a haircut and refuses to drink wine that costs less than $50 a glass. Growing up, I never saw him perform an ounce of manual labor. He existed in a climate-controlled bubble of tailored linen suits, pristine boat shoes, and air-conditioned showrooms. He hired contractors to change the light bulbs in our Boca Raton house. The man on my screen is drenched. Perspiration stains the collar of his cheap gray hoodie. His face is pale, his jaw clenched tight with a frantic cornered energy. He looks like an addict desperate for a fix. In a way, he is. His fix is $700,000. He assumes I keep the physical trust documents hidden in my apartment like a fool. He thinks if he can break in and find the original paperwork, he can forge a signature, destroy the restrictive clauses, or find some piece of leverage to clear the hurdle standing between him and his survival. He is a man who has run out of legal options, reducing himself to a common burglar in the middle of the night. Victoria leans across the mahogany desk, her sharp, dark eyes tracking the live video feed on my screen. She does not gasp. She processes the threat with the cold mechanical efficiency of a tactical commander analyzing a battlefield. She reaches for the sleek black landline on her desk. She asks for my exact address, her fingers hovering over the keypad to dial the local Tampa precinct. She says an attempted burglary charge will give us enough leverage to secure a permanent restraining order and force a judge to throw out the conservatorship petition immediately. I reach out and place my hand over hers. I press the receiver back into the cradle. I shake my head. Calling the police right now is a tactical mistake. If squad cars pull up to my complex, Derek will hear the sirens echo through the parking lot. He will drop the tool and run. He will hire a high-priced defense attorney by morning and claim he was just checking on his daughter because he was worried about my mental health. He will use the broken door as proof of my own erratic behavior, twisting the narrative to fit his fraudulent hospital affidavit. He will spin a simple domestic disturbance into more ammunition for his case, claiming I locked myself inside and he was trying to rescue me. I do not want him arrested for a misdemeanor property damage charge. I want him to know that the game is over. I tap the small microphone icon at the bottom of the security application. A red light pulses on the screen indicating the two-way audio feed is live. The speaker on the doorbell camera is small, but the acoustics in that narrow Tampa hallway carry sound perfectly. I do not yell. I do not let my voice shake. I do not beg him to stop breaking my property. I speak into the phone with the calm, deadpan rhythm of an emergency room nurse delivering a terminal diagnosis. The police are 3 minutes away, Dad, and they know about the double-financed yachts. The audio delay over the cellular network is roughly 1 second. I watch the high-definition screen as my voice echoes out of the small plastic speaker above his head. The effect is instantaneous and total. Derek freezes. The kinetic, frantic energy evaporates, leaving a statue in its place. The muscles in his back go rigid. The crowbar slips from his grip. It hits the concrete walkway with a sharp, heavy clatter that registers through the microphone like a gunshot. He does not scramble to pick it up. He does not look around the hallway to see if any neighbors heard the noise. His head snaps up, and he stares directly into the glass lens of the camera. For 26 years, Derek looked at me and saw an audience. He saw a prop, a dependent, someone he could easily maneuver to maintain his affluent illusion. Right now, staring into that tiny lens, he sees the architect of his ruin. The expression twisting his features is a chaotic, visceral blend of unadulterated terror and pure, venomous hatred. He realizes in a fraction of a second that I am not sitting inside that apartment waiting to be victimized. He realizes I am in Miami. He realizes I have the investigator files. He realizes the federal wire fraud is no longer a secret buried in a Delaware post office box. He takes one step backward, his chest heaving, his eyes wide with the realization that he just brought a crowbar to a federal gunfight. Then he turns and sprints down the walkway toward the stairwell. The camera catches a final blur of his gray hoodie before the motion sensor times out, and the screen fades back to a static view of my empty, splintered doorframe. I tap the screen, closing the application, and lower the phone. The quiet of the Miami law office rushes back in. The hum of the central air conditioning sounds loud in the silence. Victoria is looking at me. The professional clinical detachment she maintains with her clients has shifted into a profound, genuine respect. She leans back in her leather chair and folds her hands neatly on the desk. "You just neutralized a physical threat with a single sentence," she says softly. "You took away his illusion of control." She is right. The power dynamic in this war just flipped on its axis. Derek drove 4 hours to my apartment to intimidate me, to violate my safe space, and steal my leverage. Instead, he walked right into a psychological landmine. He is driving back to Boca Raton right now in a blind panic, knowing that every mile he covers brings him closer to a federal indictment. He is no longer the predator hunting a weak target. He is a criminal waiting for the authorities to kick his door down. We spend the next 2 hours finalizing the counteroffensive. Victoria books me a room at a secure corporate hotel 3 blocks from her office under a pseudonym. She arranges for a trusted locksmith to repair my Tampa door and dispatches a private security firm to monitor my apartment complex until I return. I leave her office as the sun begins to set over Biscayne Bay, casting long, sharp shadows across the pavement. I check into the hotel order room service I barely eat and lie in the dark listening to the distant hum of the city traffic. I do not toss and turn. I sleep with the deep, uninterrupted stillness of someone who has finally stopped running from ghosts. The morning light filters through the heavy blackout curtains. I wake up, pour a cup of bitter hotel coffee, and open my laptop at the small desk near the window. I expect a barrage of threats. I expect Derek to double down on his legal attacks, out of sheer desperation, perhaps calling the hospital to accelerate my suspension. But my inbox shows only one new message. The sender is Brenda. The subject line is blank. I click open the email. The tone is entirely unrecognizable. There are no demands. There is no condescension. There are no mentions of family legacy duty or respect. Instead, the message is a frantic, groveling plea. Brenda is apologizing. She claims things have gotten completely out of hand, that Derek is not in his right mind due to stress, and that they are willing to drop the hospital complaints and withdraw the conservatorship petition immediately. She begs me to meet them for a formal mediation in Fort Lauderdale to settle this as a family before anyone does something they will regret. I read the email from my mother 3 times. The glowing screen illuminates the dark hotel room, casting long shadows against the walls. Brenda Cooper does not apologize because she feels remorse. She apologizes because her husband failed to break down my front door, and they are rapidly running out of ammunition. The email is a masterclass in manipulation disguised as a white flag. She uses the word family 4 times in 3 short paragraphs. She claims Derek is suffering from severe stress and poor judgment. She suggests that all the legal filings, the hospital complaint, the conservatorship petition, are just a massive misunderstanding that can be resolved if we just sit down in a room together. She begs for a formal mediation to settle this quietly. I take my laptop down to the 32nd floor of the Brickell Avenue office building as soon as the sun rises. I place the computer on the mahogany desk and turn the screen toward Victoria Reyes. Victoria reads the email in silence. She does not frown. She does not express concern or sympathy. The corners of her mouth simply twitch upward, forming a sharp, predatory smile. It is the exact expression of a shark smelling a fresh drop of blood in the water. "This is a trap," Victoria says, pushing the laptop back across the desk. I nod, taking a seat in the leather chair. I know they do not want to apologize. I know they want something. They want to contain the blast radius, Victoria explains, leaning back and steepling her fingers. Derek realizes physical intimidation will not work because you hold the leverage of his federal crimes. But he also knows that if this dispute goes to open court, those private investigator files become public record. A formal mediation is confidential. Whatever is said in that room stays in that room. They want to get you behind closed doors with their lawyer to orchestrate an extortion trade. How does the trade work, I ask? It is standard sleight of hand, Victoria replies. Their attorney will sit across from you and offer a grand compromise. He will promise to formally withdraw the petition for conservatorship. He will promise that Derek will make a phone call to the chief of staff at your hospital, claiming the drug theft accusation was a tragic administrative error, clearing your nursing license entirely. In exchange for giving you your life back, they will ask you to authorize a temporary loan from your trust. Something substantial. $500,000 to cover their immediate operational debts. They will frame it as a necessary sacrifice to save the family business. They want me to buy my own freedom with my grandfather's money, I say, the cold reality settling in my chest. Exactly, Victoria says. They expect you to be exhausted. They expect you to be terrified of losing your career. They assume that if they offer you an exit ramp, you will take it even if it costs you everything Leo left you. I look out the window at the Biscayne Bay water catching the morning light. I think about Derek sweating in his gray hoodie with a crowbar. I think about Brenda signing fraudulent tax documents to pay for country club dues. I think about the sterile human resources office and my badge sitting on Diane's desk. Do we reject the mediation, I ask? Victoria shakes her head, her dark eyes gleaming with a calculating energy. No, we accept it. If your enemy invites you into a trap, you walk in, and you bring a bigger trap. We give them enough rope to hang themselves. We agree to mediate, but we dictate the staging. We do not meet in Boca Raton, and we do not use their law firm. We select a neutral conference facility in downtown Fort Lauderdale. We let them build their little theater. We let them gather in one room thinking they have cornered you. And then we detonate the floor beneath them. The mediation is set for Friday morning. That gives me 4 days to prepare my defenses. I cannot walk into that room worrying about my flanks. I need to secure my life in Tampa before I return to South Florida to end this. I drive back across the state on Tuesday. I do not go to my apartment alone. The security firm Victoria hired is watching the perimeter, but the space itself no longer feels safe. The front door bears the deep, splintered gouges from Derek's crowbar. It is a physical reminder that biological ties offer zero protection. I call 2 nurses from my emergency room shift, Maria and Sarah. They are women who have held pressure on arterial bleeds with me at 3 in the morning. They do not ask intrusive questions. They do not demand an emotional performance. They show up an hour later with a stack of flattened cardboard boxes, 2 rolls of packing tape, and iced coffees. We spend the afternoon packing my entire life into those boxes. We empty the kitchen cabinets, fold the scrubs, and dismantle the modest furniture. I am moving my belongings into a secure storage unit until the dust settles. Watching Maria tape a box shut while Sarah hauls bags down the stairs, I realize something profound. Brenda and Derek weaponize the concept of family to steal from me. But family is not a genetic lottery. Family is the people who show up with packing tape when your front door is broken. Family is the people who help you vanish when the predators are circling. On Wednesday, I address the professional threat. I meet Helen, my trauma nursing supervisor, at a quiet diner just off the interstate. The smell of burnt coffee and frying bacon grounds the conversation. Helen looks tired, carrying the weight of a busy trauma ward on her shoulders, but her eyes are sharp and attentive. I slide a manila folder across the diner table. It does not contain the federal wire fraud evidence. I am keeping that contained. But it does contain the timeline. I show Helen a copy of the sworn affidavit claiming I am mentally unstable, signed by Dr. Vance at 9 in the morning. Then I show her the timestamps of the hospital suspension notice filed just 3 hours later. I explain the connection between Derek and Dr. Vance. I explain the country club membership and the fabricated narrative designed to break my leverage. Helen studies the papers. She has worked at Tampa General for 20 years. She knows the politics. She knows how hospital administrators protect their own. But she also knows my work ethic. She knows my drug counts have never been short by a single milligram. I need someone in my corner, I tell her, keeping my voice steady. When I clear my name, the medical board is going to launch an investigation into the false report. I need a veteran supervisor willing to testify that my clinical performance was flawless. Helen closes the folder. She looks at me, her expression hardening into resolute loyalty. The chief of staff crossed a line that endangers every nurse in that building, she says quietly. You have my word. I will stand in front of any medical board and testify on your behalf. I leave the diner feeling a heavy layer of armor locking into place. My belongings are secure. My professional reputation has a credible defender. My chosen family is holding the line. Thursday night, I check into a corporate hotel in Fort Lauderdale, just 2 blocks from the glass high-rise where the mediation will take place. I order room service. I review the binder of private investigator files Victoria digitized for me. I memorize the names of the shell companies and the dates of the fraudulent loans. I sharpen every detail in my mind until it feels like a physical weapon I can wield. Friday morning arrives with brilliant, unforgiving Florida sunshine. The sky is a stark, empty blue. I dress in a tailored navy blazer and dark trousers. I do not dress like a grieving daughter, and I do not dress like an erratic, unstable patient. I dress like a woman walking into a boardroom to execute a hostile takeover. I meet Victoria Reyes at a quiet coffee shop across the street from the mediation center. She is already seated at a corner table, a sleek leather briefcase resting near her feet. She is drinking black espresso. She looks up as I approach and gives a short, approving nod at my appearance. "Are you ready?" she asks, her voice low and focused. I take a seat across from her. I am ready. I know exactly what they are going to say, and I know exactly what we are going to do. Victoria reaches into her briefcase. She does not pull out a legal brief or a settlement contract. She pulls out a heavy cream-colored envelope. It matches the exact stationery of the envelope I slid across my parents' glass dining table 5 days ago. The flap is sealed tight with wax. She places it on the small cafe table and slides it toward me. "This is the second letter," Victoria says, her tone losing its clinical edge, softening into something almost reverent. "Leo wrote 2 letters before he died. The first one was for your mother. He told me to keep this second one locked in my safe. He gave me very specific instructions on when to deliver it to you." I stare at the cream paper. My grandfather's slanted handwriting spells out my name on the front. "When did he say to give it to me?" I ask, my pulse ticking a fraction faster against my collarbone. Victoria looks out the window toward the towering glass building where Derek and Brenda are currently waiting for us. "He told me to give it to you right before the end." I sit alone behind the steering wheel of my used car. The engine is turned off. The morning sun beats down through the windshield, baking the dashboard and turning the small interior into a stifling pocket of heat. Just across the street, a towering Fort Lauderdale high-rise stretches into the cloudless blue sky. Its mirrored glass panels reflect the glaring light, making the building look like a fortress of polished ice. Somewhere on the 14th floor of that structure, my parents are waiting in a reserved mediation suite. They think they have orchestrated my surrender. I do not look at the building. I look at the item resting on my lap. The cream-colored envelope Victoria handed me at the coffee shop feels heavy against my thighs. It is sealed with a dark crimson wax stamp. The edges of the paper are slightly worn, retaining the faint, unmistakable scent of the man who wrote it. It smells like dried ink, old parchment, and a trace of the salt air that always clung to my grandfather. My fingers trace the jagged edge of the wax seal. For the past 5 days, my entire existence has been a calculated sequence of tactical maneuvers. I have dodged legal ambushes, secured my apartment, protected my nursing license, and analyzed federal wire fraud documents. I have operated on pure, cold adrenaline. But sitting here in the suffocating heat of the car staring at Leo's slanted handwriting, the adrenaline recedes. The tactical armor drops away. I am just a granddaughter holding the last words of the only man who ever truly protected her. I slide my thumb under the flap and break the wax. The seal fractures with a sharp, brittle snap. I pull out a single sheet of heavy stationery, unfold it, and begin to read. "My dearest Lucia," the letter begins. "If Victoria has handed you this envelope, it means the storm I warned her about has finally broken. It means Derek has made his move, and Brenda has chosen to stand beside him. I write this to you knowing that by the time you read these words, you will be exhausted. You will be hurting. You will be questioning every fundamental truth you were ever taught about what it means to be a daughter." I grip the edges of the paper. The ink bleeds slightly into the heavy grain of the stationary proof of the slow, deliberate pressure he applied while writing. "I need you to listen to me very carefully." The letter continues. I spent the last 10 years of my life watching my own daughter become a stranger. I watched Brenda trade her humanity for country club invitations, and I watched Derek drag her into a financial abyss out of sheer, unadulterated arrogance. But my greatest regret, the failure that keeps me awake in the dark, is not how they ruined their own lives. My greatest regret is that I watched them try to ruin yours. I swallow hard. The heat in the car is intense, but a shiver runs down my spine. I saw the way they treated you, Leo wrote. I saw the isolation in that Boca Raton house. I saw them mold your sister into a prop for their vanity, while treating you like a burden because you refused to perform for their audience. I saw you shrink yourself to avoid their anger. I saw you work double shifts to pay for your own textbooks while Derek leased luxury vehicles for his corporate image. I knew the environment was toxic and I failed you. I should have fought harder. I should have hired a lawyer when you were a teenager, petitioned for custody, and pulled you out of that house before their poison could seep any deeper into your bones. I chose to keep the peace. I chose quiet disapproval over intervention. I was a coward, Lucia, and for that I am profoundly sorry. My vision blurs. The bold, slanted letters on the page swim out of focus. I have spent my entire adult life trying to convince myself that the emotional neglect of my childhood was normal. I convinced myself that I was just too sensitive, too demanding, too different from the rest of my family. Reading the validation in my grandfather's handwriting, seeing him name the toxicity and take responsibility for his inaction, feels like a physical weight being excised from my chest. I blink the moisture away and force my eyes to focus on the next paragraph. I cannot rewrite the past, Leo continued, but I can dictate the future. You are going to be told that the trust I established is a family asset. You will be told that you have a moral obligation to save your father from his own criminal stupidity. You will be told that refusing to hand over the funds is an act of betrayal. Let me be perfectly clear. The $700,000 I placed in your name is not an inheritance. It is a shield. I built that trust to be a weapon of independence. I structured it so that no matter how hard they pressure you, no matter what legal fictions they invent, they cannot breach the walls. Derek built a house of cards on stolen money. The wind is finally blowing and the cards are coming down. Do not let them tie you to the foundation. You owe them nothing. You do not owe them your savings. You do not owe them your reputation. You do not owe them your future. The final lines of the letter are written with darker, heavier ink, as if he pressed the pen down with the last ounce of strength he possessed. Society will tell you that you must forgive them because they are your parents. Society is wrong. Blood makes you related, Lucia. Loyalty makes you family. Walk in there and cut the cord. I love you. The letter ends simply with his signature. I sit in the profound, heavy silence of the car. A single tear escapes, cutting a warm path down my cheek. I do not brush it away immediately. I let the grief run its course. I mourn the grandfather who loved me enough to build a fortress for my future, and I mourn the parents who viewed me as nothing more than an ATM. Then I reach up and wipe my face. The sadness evaporates, replaced by a deep, unshakable clarity. The guilt that has plagued me for 26 years, the quiet, persistent voice whispering that I am a bad daughter for setting boundaries, is gone. It burns away in the Florida heat, leaving behind a core of solid steel. I carefully fold the heavy stationery along its original creases. I slide it back into the cream envelope and place it securely inside my purse. I turn off the engine, open the car door, and step out onto the sun-bleached pavement. The transition from the humid outdoor air to the freezing air-conditioned lobby of the high-rise is jarring. The building hums with corporate efficiency. Men and women in tailored suits stride across polished marble floors carrying briefcases and speaking into wireless headsets. I walk toward the bank of elevators. My posture is straight. My steps are measured. I do not feel like a nurse walking into a disciplinary hearing. I feel like an executioner. Victoria Reyes is waiting for me by the elevator doors. She holds her sleek leather briefcase in one hand. She looks at my face, noting the shift in my demeanor. She does not ask if I read the letter. She does not ask if I am okay. She sees the cold resolve in my eyes and simply nods. We step into the elevator car. The doors slide shut, cutting off the noise of the lobby. The digital display ticks upward. 5, 9, 12, 14. The doors glide open with a soft chime. The 14th floor is dedicated entirely to alternative dispute resolution. The reception area features plush beige carpeting, abstract modern art, and a receptionist sitting behind a curved mahogany desk. Victoria approaches the desk, provides our names, and the receptionist points us down a long, quiet corridor lined with frosted glass doors. Conference Room B. We walk down the corridor side by side. The sound of our shoes sinks into the thick carpet. We reach the heavy oak door. Victoria looks at me one last time. I give her a single definitive nod. I push the heavy door open and step inside. The conference room is expansive. A massive rectangular table dominates the center of the space, surrounded by ergonomic leather chairs. Floor-to-ceiling windows offer a dizzying view of the city below. My family is already seated along the left side of the table. Brenda is wearing a pristine white designer suit, her posture rigid, her makeup flawless. She projects an aura of aggrieved nobility. Derek sits next to her, leaning back in his chair with his arms crossed over his chest, feigning a relaxed, confident ease. Brooke sits at the far end of their row, scrolling idly on her phone, playing the role of the bored, inconvenient sibling. Sitting at the center of their side is a fast-talking local attorney in a flashy gray suit sorting through a stack of pre-printed settlement agreements. As we enter, Derek smirks. Brenda lifts her chin, her eyes flashing with a triumphant, vindictive gleam. They look smug. They look victorious. They look like predators watching their prey walk willingly into a trap. They are so focused on my arrival, so consumed by their own arrogant script, that they do not notice the layout of the rest of the room. They have not even bothered to look at the far end of the long conference table. Sitting quietly in the shadows near the corner windows, wearing unremarkable dark suits and bearing identical impassive expressions are two extra men. The air inside Conference Room B feels artificially dense, heavy with the scent of expensive perfume and nervous energy. Brenda sits perfectly upright, her shoulders squared beneath a tailored white blazer that probably costs more than a month of my rent. She offers me a tight, practiced smile, the kind of smile she usually reserves for country club waitstaff she intends to tip poorly. Derek is leaning back in his leather chair, trying to project the image of an unbothered executive, but his right knee is bouncing in a rapid, restless staccato beneath the mahogany table. Brooke does not even look up from her phone, swiping through a social media feed, as if she is waiting for an oil change rather than attending a legal mediation concerning her sister's autonomy. Sitting precisely in the center of their lineup is a man I have never seen before. He wears a bright blue pinstripe suit and a gold tie that catches the morning light pouring through the floor-to-ceiling windows. This is their attorney. He looks exactly like the kind of lawyer who buys billboard space on the interstate and promises aggressive representation in 30 seconds or less. Victoria and I take our seats on the opposite side of the table. I place my purse, which holds Leo's letter, carefully on the floor next to my chair. Before we can even exchange formal introductions, the man in the pinstripe suit leans forward, resting his elbows on the polished wood. Lucia, he begins, his tone instantly adopting a patronizing conversational rhythm. My name is Gregory Vance. No relation to the good doctor at your hospital, just a coincidence of names. I represent your parents. Look, we are all adults here. We know that grief does strange things to family dynamics. Your grandfather's passing was a tragedy, and emotions are running high. But nobody wants to drag this out in a messy public courtroom. It is bad for your career, and it is terrible for your family's privacy. He pauses, leaning back slightly, letting his hands fall open in a gesture of faux transparency. Derek and Brenda love you, Gregory continues, seamlessly delivering the script. They filed the conservatorship petition out of an abundance of caution, strictly due to the alarming reports regarding your behavior at work. We understand the hospital has initiated an administrative leave protocol. That is a terrifying prospect for a young nurse. But your parents have a proposal. They are prepared to unconditionally withdraw the conservatorship petition today. Furthermore, your father is willing to make a personal phone call to the hospital administration to clear up the unfortunate misunderstanding regarding the narcotics log. You keep your license, you keep your independence, and the family moves forward together. The sheer audacity of the opening move is breathtaking. Gregory presents the extortion as a generous act of parental salvation. He frames the destruction of my career, a crisis they engineered entirely on their own, as a tragic accident they are graciously offering to fix. In exchange for this sweeping resolution, Gregory says, reaching into his briefcase and pulling out a crisp stack of stapled documents, we ask for a singular gesture of family unity. Derek's business is experiencing a temporary, strictly short-term liquidity issue. We have prepared an asset transfer agreement. You will authorize a loan of $500,000 from the trust principal to Coastal Prestige Yachts. The loan will be repaid with a standard interest rate over 5 years. He slides the document across the expansive mahogany table. It stops directly in front of me. Sign this, Gregory says smoothly, and this entire nightmare goes away before lunch. I do not touch the document. I do not even look down at the pages. I keep my eyes locked entirely on my mother. Brenda is watching me intently, her expression a mask of manufactured concern, hiding a deep vindictive triumph. She thinks she has won. She thinks the threat to my nursing license has successfully broken my resolve, just as she planned when she coordinated the hospital ambush. I let the silence stretch for 5 full seconds. I let the arrogance settle thickly into the room. Then Victoria Reyes stands up. The motion is fluid, commanding immediate attention. She buttons the single button of her charcoal blazer, her dark eyes scanning the opposite side of the table. She does not look at Derek. She does not look at Brenda. She focuses her gaze entirely on Gregory Vance. Mr. Vance. Victoria begins, her voice dropping into a register that is cold, academic, and utterly devoid of negotiation. We will not be reviewing your asset transfer agreement today. We will not be negotiating a loan to your client's failing dealership. And we certainly will not be entertaining an extortion attempt disguised as a family settlement. Gregory scoffs a sharp, dismissive sound. He reaches for the document. Now listen here. Opposing counsel, if your client wants to play hardball while her nursing license is actively under review. You misunderstand the nature of this meeting. Victoria interrupts, her voice cutting through his bluster like a scalpel. This is not a negotiation. This is a courtesy notification. She gestures gracefully toward the far end of the long conference table, toward the shadows near the corner windows where the sunlight does not quite reach. My parents and their lawyer finally follow her gesture. They turn their heads, their arrogant posture faltering as they register the presence of the 2 extra men sitting quietly in the leather chairs. The men are wearing unremarkable dark navy suits. They do not have legal pads. They do not have briefcases. They sit with the stillness of professionals who are entirely accustomed to observing high-stakes panic. This mediation. Victoria announces, her voice echoing slightly in the vast room, is being observed by Agent Miller and Agent Davis of the Federal Bureau of Investigation Financial Crimes Division. The silence that descends upon Conference Room B is absolute. It is not the silence of a pause in conversation. It is the vacuum of a collapsed lung. Brenda's confident, practiced sneer vanishes instantly. The color drains from her face, leaving her foundation looking like a pale mask stretched over brittle bone. Derek stops bouncing his knee. His entire body goes rigid, his eyes locked on the 2 men at the end of the table, as if they are apparitions. Brooke finally drops her phone, the screen shattering against the mahogany wood, the sound loud and startling in the frozen room. Gregory Vance, the fast-talking attorney who promised a swift resolution before lunch, stops mid-sentence. He looks from Victoria to the agents, and then slowly, deliberately down at his own client. The realization washes over him in real time. He realizes he has not been hired to negotiate a simple family probate dispute. He realizes he has just walked into a federal trap carrying a document that attempts to extort money to cover up a felony. Gregory does not say another word. He reaches across the table, pulls the asset transfer agreement back toward himself, and slowly begins closing his briefcase. Gregory Vance slides his hands off the mahogany table. He does not apologize to his clients. He does not offer a defensive counter-argument to save face. A lawyer who purchases billboard space on the interstate knows the distinct difference between a civil probate dispute and a federal criminal trap. In the legal profession, the instinct for self-preservation overrides a retainer fee every single time. He snaps the brass clasps of his briefcase shut. The metallic sound echoes in the quiet room, like a heavy latch falling into place. He pushes his leather chair back, distancing himself physically from the people who hired him. Brenda blinks rapidly, her eyes darting between Victoria Reyes and the two quiet men sitting in the shadows near the corner windows. Her brain struggles to process the visual information. The country club logic she has relied on for 3 decades is failing her. You cannot charm an investigator from the Financial Crimes Division. You cannot intimidate them by threatening to call the management. Her foundation of privilege dissolves into thin air, leaving her sitting perfectly rigid in her white designer blazer, paralyzed by a reality she cannot manipulate. Victoria stands at the edge of the table, projecting the calm authority of a surgeon stepping up to an operating table. She opens the thick black binder. She bypasses the tabs related to my nursing license and the hospital suspension. Those issues are no longer relevant. We are not here to debate the fabricated medical claims. We are here to execute the contingency plan. My grandfather learned how to handle predators a long time ago. Back in the late 80s, a commercial fuel vendor tried to extort his growing marina by doctoring the delivery manifests. The vendor threatened to cut off the diesel supply right before the busy tourist season unless Leo paid a fabricated premium. Leo did not argue. He did not threaten retaliation. He simply paid the inflated invoices for 3 months to establish a clear, documented pattern of extortion. Then he gathered the fraudulent ledgers, cross-referenced them with the state transport logs, and hand-delivered the pristine package of evidence to the state attorney general. The vendor went to prison, and Leo secured a new supplier. My grandfather understood that the most devastating weapon a person can wield is a quiet, meticulously organized paper trail. He applied that exact same ruthless logic to his own daughter and son-in-law. Victoria looks directly at Derek, her dark eyes pinning him to his chair. Leo did not just leave behind an irrevocable trust, Victoria explains, her voice level and precise. He designed a specific architectural mechanism to protect his granddaughter. He requested a customized in terrorem clause. In standard estate law, this is known as a no-contest provision. It dictates that if a beneficiary challenges the validity of the trust, they forfeit their right to inherit. But Leo knew you were not beneficiaries. He knew you were external threats. So he instructed my firm to intertwine the no-contest clause with a strict fraud protection stipulation. Derek stops bouncing his knee. The color drains from his face, leaving his skin looking like wet ash. He stares at the black binder as if it is a live explosive. The trust was designed with a legal tripwire. Victoria continues turning a page in the binder. The document explicitly stated that if any external party attempted to bypass the trust restrictions by initiating hostile legal action against the primary beneficiary, my firm was legally obligated to execute an immediate defensive protocol. She rests her hand on the open page. When you walked into the courthouse earlier this week and filed the petition for a temporary conservatorship, Victoria says you officially crossed that threshold. Your filing was a documented hostile attempt to seize control of the trust assets through the forced incapacitation of my client. That legal action triggered the fail-safe. The silence in the room is total. The hum of the central air conditioning system provides a low, steady drone underneath Victoria's measured words. Per Leo's explicit instructions, Victoria states any hostile action against Lucia automatically authorized my firm to unseal the secondary files. The findings from the forensic accountant Leo hired a year before his death, the bank routing numbers from the credit union in South Carolina, the forged title registrations for the luxury yachts, the incorporation documents for the Delaware shell companies. Brenda lets out a short, shallow gasp. She covers her mouth with her hand, her manicured nails digging into her cheek. Victoria gestures toward the far end of the long conference table. I did not bring the federal agents here to negotiate the status of Lucia's nursing license, Victoria clarifies, delivering the final fatal blow. I brought them here as a courtesy notification. The investigator files were electronically transmitted to the Financial Crimes Division 48 hours ago. This mediation is just a stage. The performance ended the moment you filed that petition. The realization settles over the parents with crushing weight. The satisfaction of the narrative unfolds without a single raised voice. There is no screaming necessary. Lethal paperwork does all the heavy lifting. Derek processes the timeline, and the arrogance that defined him for decades fractures entirely. The illusion of the successful commanding executive shatters, exposing the terrified, over-leveraged fraud underneath. The primitive fight or flight instinct takes over. The room suddenly feels too small for him. The tailored suit looks suffocating. He grips the armrests of his leather chair, his knuckles turning stark white against the dark material. He pushes the chair back violently, the wheels dragging harshly against the thick carpet. He tries to stand up, his chest heaving, his eyes darting frantically toward the frosted glass door leading to the hallway. He wants to flee the room to escape the physical presence of his own ruin. The agent sitting closest to the window. Agent Miller does not reach inside his jacket. He does not shift his posture. He simply leans forward, resting his forearms on his knees. "Sit back down, Mr. Cooper," the agent says. The instruction carries no heat, only the crushing, inevitable gravity of federal authority. It is the tone of a man who freezes bank accounts and seizes passports for a living. Derek freezes halfway out of his chair. The instinct to run collides with the reality that there is nowhere left to hide. The physical collapse of his bravado is swift. His knees buckle slightly, and he drops back into the leather seat. His shoulders sagging, his eyes staring blankly at the mahogany grain of the table. He looks like a man who has just been informed of his own terminal diagnosis. The focus in the room shifts. Brooke, sitting at the far end of the family lineup, lowers her shattered phone to her lap. She is the golden child. The sorority girl whose entire identity, from her luxury apartment in Coral Gables to her designer wardrobe, is funded by the shell companies Brenda helped manage. She was raised in an environment of transactional affection. Her loyalty was always contingent on the preservation of her comfort. Brooke looks at Derek, defeated and hollow in his chair. She looks at Brenda, paralyzed and hyperventilating in her white suit. Brooke does the math with ruthless efficiency. The tuition payments are gone. The Range Rover will be repossessed. The offshore accounts are frozen. The lifestyle she considers her birthright has vaporized, replaced by the looming specter of federal indictments and asset forfeiture. The instinct of the spoiled child is to save herself at any cost. When the transaction fails, the loyalty evaporates instantly. Brooke pushes her chair back and stands up. Her hands are shaking, her eyes wide with a frantic, desperate energy. She does not look at me. She does not look at her father. She turns, extends a trembling finger, and points directly at her mother. "It was her idea," Brooke says, her voice echoing sharp and high in the quiet room. "I did not know anything about the yachts." Brooke keeps her finger aimed at Brenda. The echo of her accusation hangs in the cold air of the conference room. "I did not know about the yachts." The words sever the deepest tie in that family. For 2 decades, Brenda curated Brooke into a flawless extension of her own ego. She bought her the right clothes, paid for the right sorority rush consultants, and taught her how to smile for country club photographers. She built a daughter who valued comfort above loyalty. When you raise a child on transactional love, you cannot be surprised when they cancel the subscription the second the funds run out. Brenda stares at her youngest child. The shock on her face mutates into a dark, raw fury. The mask of the noble matriarch burns away entirely. "You ungrateful brat," Brenda snaps. Her voice is a harsh, grating sound that bounces off the glass walls. "I signed those tax returns to keep a roof over your head. I signed them to pay for your tuition and your designer bags. Do not stand there and pretend you did not enjoy spending the money while I took the risks." Brooke steps back, her eyes darting around the room, searching for an exit that does not exist. "I am 20 years old," Brooke counters her pitch, rising into a frantic whine. "I am a student. You were the chief financial officer. You signed the federal documents. You are the one going to prison, not me." The cruelty of the exchange is breathtaking. They are tearing each other to pieces over the carcass of their fake wealth. There is no familial bond here. There is only a sinking ship and rats fighting for the last piece of driftwood. Derek does not step in to mediate the screaming match between his wife and his daughter. He does not defend Brenda. He does not scold Brooke. The patriarchal protector vanishes. Instead, he leans across the mahogany table, ignoring his family entirely, and locks his eyes on Agent Miller. "Listen to me," Derek says. His voice is slick with sweat dropping into a rapid, desperate cadence. "I was misled. The holding companies in Delaware were structured by outside consultants. I just signed the paperwork they put in front of me. The double financing was an accounting error handled by third-party brokers. I can give you their names. I can give you the email servers. I can cooperate." He is begging. The man who stood on my doorstep with a steel crowbar just 48 hours ago is now offering to wear a wire and send his own business partners to a federal penitentiary. He is even throwing Brenda under the bus, casually mentioning to the agents that the chief financial officer handled all the out-of-state loan applications. I sit perfectly still in my leather chair. I watch the chaos unfold in front of me. I expect to feel a surge of vindication. I expect to feel a fiery, triumphant anger. For 4 days, these people hunted me. They tried to steal my inheritance, destroy my nursing career, and lock me in a legal cage using a fraudulent medical diagnosis. I have every right to despise them. But as I watch Derek barter his wife for a lighter sentence, and as I watch Brenda curse the daughter she molded in her own image, the anger drains out of me. It leaves behind a profound, hollow pity. They are pathetic. They spent their entire lives chasing an illusion of status, sacrificing every genuine human connection to maintain a zip code and a country club membership. They end up in a rented conference room, stripped of their assets, betraying their own blood to save themselves. I do not hate them anymore. Hating them requires an emotional investment they no longer deserve. Victoria Reyes does not share my quiet contemplation. She is a professional, and professionals do not leave loose ends on the battlefield. The family infighting is just background noise to her. She ignores the screaming match between Brenda and Brooke. She ignores Derek babbling to the federal agents. She focuses her attention entirely on Gregory Vance. The local attorney is still sitting in his chair, his hands resting on his closed briefcase. He looks like a man calculating the fastest route to the parking garage. Victoria reaches into her black binder. She pulls out a single crisp sheet of paper and slides it across the polished mahogany. It stops inches from Gregory's hands. "Mr. Vance," Victoria says. Her voice is calm, cutting effortlessly through the noise in the room. Gregory looks up. He glances at the paper, then at Victoria. "That is a drafted retraction letter," Victoria explains. "It is addressed to the Human Resources Department at Tampa General Hospital and the Florida Board of Nursing. It explicitly states that the previous complaint regarding my client's clinical conduct was filed in error based on fabricated information and is hereby unconditionally withdrawn." Gregory swallows hard. His throat shifts against his gold tie. "My clients are currently dealing with a separate matter," he stammers, gesturing vaguely toward the federal agents. "I am not sure they are in a position to address civil grievances today." Victoria leans forward. Her dark eyes lock onto him with the precision of a predator zeroing in on a weak pulse. "You will make sure they address it today," Victoria says softly. "I expect that retraction letter signed by Dr. Richard Vance and your client, Derek Cooper. I expect it transmitted to the hospital administration and my office by 5 o'clock this evening." Gregory tries to muster a shred of legal defiance, and if the chief of staff refuses to sign a document admitting to a fabricated report, "Then we expand the scope of the federal indictment," Victoria replies without missing a beat. "The Financial Crimes Division is currently focused on wire fraud and bank deception, but attempting to extort a federal witness by falsifying medical records crosses jurisdictional lines. If that retraction is not in my inbox by 5 o'clock, I will personally ensure that medical board tampering and witness intimidation are added to the list of charges your clients face." And I will make sure the federal prosecutor knows exactly which local attorney drafted the asset transfer agreement used in the extortion attempt today. The implicit threat lands with devastating accuracy. Victoria is casually reminding him that she can tie him to the conspiracy. She can drag him down with the sinking ship. Gregory Vance turns pale. He does not argue. He does not negotiate the deadline. He simply nods frantically, his self-preservation instinct overriding every other thought in his head. He reaches out with a trembling hand, grabs the drafted retraction letter, and stuffs it into his jacket pocket. "I will have it to your office by 4, he whispers. The final thread of their trap is severed. My nursing license is safe. My reputation is secure. The defensive perimeter my grandfather built has held against every single attack." The noise at the other end of the table begins to taper off. Brenda has run out of insults. She slumps back in her chair, her chest heaving, staring at the ceiling with hollow eyes. Brooke is crying silently, mourning the loss of her credit cards. Derek has stopped trying to bargain with the silent men in the dark suits. He realizes they are not asking him questions. They are just listening to him confess. The air in the room settles into a grim, heavy stillness. The performance is over. The reality of the situation has finally caught up to the architects of the fraud. I look at Victoria. She gives me a small, approving nod. Our work here is done. The paper fortress served its purpose. We can walk out of this room and leave them to the consequences of their own greed. But the meeting is not quite over. At the far end of the long mahogany table, the shadows shift. The low hum of the air conditioning is broken by the sound of chairs pushing back against the thick carpet. Agent Miller and Agent Davis stand up in unison. They are tall, imposing men, moving with a synchronized, practiced authority. They do not raise their voices. They do not reach for handcuffs right away. They simply step forward into the light pouring through the floor to ceiling windows, crossing the space between the corners of the room and the family seated at the table. "We appreciate your willingness to cooperate, Mr. Cooper," Agent Miller says, his voice flat and professional. Derek looks up, a fleeting spark of hope igniting in his eyes. He thinks his babbling worked. He thinks he just negotiated a lifeline. But we are not here to schedule a proffer session. Agent Miller continues, reaching into the inner pocket of his suit jacket. "We are not here to observe a civil mediation. We let this meeting proceed because we needed to ensure all relevant parties were present in one location." The spark in Derek's eyes extinguishes instantly. Agent Miller pulls a thick, folded document from his jacket. He places it on the table in front of Derek. The paper bears the official seal of a federal magistrate judge. "Derek Cooper and Brenda Cooper, Agent Miller," says the words, falling like concrete blocks into the silent room. "We have federal warrants for your arrest." The heavy document rests on the mahogany table, its stark black text contrasting sharply with the polished wood. Agent Miller does not raise his voice to declare his authority. He does not need to. He taps the paper with his index finger, his posture relaxed but commanding, projecting the sterile confidence of a man who dismantles lives for a living. He reads the charges aloud. The words fill the conference room, stripping away the remaining oxygen. 18 U.S. Code, Section 1343 Wire Fraud. 18 U.S. Code, Section 1344 Bank Fraud. Conspiracy to commit offenses against the United States. The terminology is clinical. It lacks the heat of a personal argument. It transforms Derek and Brenda from scheming parents into bureaucratic case numbers. Agent Davis, standing just a half step behind his partner, pulls a secondary folder from his jacket. He places it next to the arrest warrants. "This is a federal seizure order." He states, his tone as flat as a dial tone. "Effective as of 0800 hours this morning, all assets tied to Coastal Prestige yachts and your personal identifying information are frozen." Derek stares at the folder. His breathing turns shallow and rapid. "This includes the operational accounts at the South Carolina Credit Union." Agent Davis continues listing the items with mechanical precision. "The investment portfolios managed under your wife's name. The deed to the primary residence in Boca Raton. All vehicle titles, including the company leases. You no longer have access to these funds. Any attempt to access them will be logged as a separate violation of this order." The reality of the asset freeze lands with a crushing, suffocating weight. It is one thing to be arrested. It is another thing to be erased. Derek is not just facing prison time, he is facing immediate, uncompromising poverty. The safety net he built on stolen money has been cut. He reaches out to grab his smartphone, which rests near the edge of the table. He likely intends to call his defense attorney, or perhaps he just needs to hold something familiar to ground himself in the spinning room. But his motor skills fail him. The panic overrides his nervous system. His fingers tremble so severely that he knocks the device over. It clatters loudly against the wood, sliding out of his reach. He tries to grasp it again, but his thumb cannot find purchase on the smooth glass screen. The man who built a career shaking hands and signing multi-million-dollar contracts cannot even pick up a 6-ounce piece of electronics. Mr. Cooper, Agent Miller says, noting the physical deterioration. Leave the device on the table. It is now classified as evidence. Please stand up and step away from the chair. It is not a television arrest. There are no sirens wailing in the distance. There are no drawn weapons, no shouted commands to get on the ground, no dramatic scuffles. A screaming arrest offers the suspect a moment of adrenaline, a chance to feel like a combatant. The federal agents do not offer Derek that luxury. They treat him like an administrative task. It is a quiet, humiliating professional escort. It shrinks Derek down to his true size. He is not a criminal mastermind. He is just a man who ran out of other people's money. Derek stands. His knees lock. He looks toward the empty chair where his local attorney, Gregory Vance, sat just moments ago. But Gregory is gone, having fled the blast radius the second the federal seal appeared. Derek is entirely alone. Brenda rises slowly from her seat. Her reaction is a chilling study in conditioning. Facing the destruction of her freedom and her social standing, her first instinct is to smooth the wrinkles out of her pristine white designer blazer. It is an automatic response, a reflex developed over decades of believing that appearance can mitigate consequence. She adjusts her cuffs, she lifts her chin. She tries to summon the aura of the aggrieved country club matriarch, but the illusion shatters the moment her eyes betray her. Her eyes are wide, hollow, and darting around the room in a raw panic. Agent Davis gestures toward the frosted glass doors. "We have a vehicle waiting in the loading dock downstairs," he says. "We will process you at the federal building. You will be given an opportunity to contact legal representation once booking is complete. Walk ahead of us, please." They begin the long walk toward the exit. The sound of their footsteps sinks into the plush beige carpet. I remain seated in my leather chair watching them move toward the door. When I was 16 years old, Brenda backed her luxury sedan into a neighbor's brick mailbox. She had spent the afternoon at a charity luncheon drinking expensive wine. She drove home, parked the dented vehicle in the garage, and walked into the kitchen where I was doing homework. She told Derek I had taken the car for a joyride before I possessed a license. I took the grounding. I took the yelling. I absorbed the consequence because that was my designated role in the family ecosystem. I was the shock absorber for her negligence. She reaches the threshold of the conference room door. The agents pause, allowing her a final moment before crossing into the public hallway. Brenda stops. She turns around. Her gaze sweeps past the empty chairs and locks onto me. There is no anger left in her expression. The vindictive triumph from the beginning of the mediation is gone. Instead, her face carries a pathetic, silent plea. She looks at me with the eyes of a mother expecting the lifelong conditioning of her child to kick in. She expects the 16-year-old girl to step forward, take the blame, open the checkbook, and fix the mess. She wants the shock absorber. I do not look away. I hold her gaze with steady, unwavering eyes. I feel the solid weight of my grandfather's letter resting inside my purse on the floor. I feel the cool air of the room. I feel the total unshakable boundary separating my life from hers. "You tell people who you are early," I say. The words carry across the long expanse of the mahogany table, quiet but resonant. I just finally listened. Brenda's shoulders sag. The final tether breaks. She turns back around, stepping out into the corridor. The heavy oak door glides shut on its hydraulic hinges, clicking into the frame with a definitive final seal. The conference room falls silent. The sprawling space, previously thick with tension and overlapping voices, feels suddenly vast and empty. The sunlight pours through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the dust motes, dancing in the air above the polished wood. Victoria Reyes exhales a slow, measured breath. She reaches across the table, gathers the drafted retraction letter Gregory Vance left behind, and slides it neatly into her black binder. She closes the cover, the leather snapping shut. The paper fortress served its purpose. The battlefield is clear, but there is one person left in the room. Brooke is still standing at the far end of the table. She has not moved since she pointed her finger at our mother. She is staring at the closed oak door, her breathing shallow. The reality of the asset freeze is a complex legal concept, but the practical application is brutally simple. Brooke's mind is racing, processing the immediate fallout. The corporate card in her wallet is dead. The lease on the Coral Gables apartment is tied to a frozen shell company. The tuition payment due on Monday will bounce. The Range Rover parked in the garage is federal property. The safety net did not just tear, it vaporized. She is a college junior who has never checked a price tag, never filled out a financial aid form, and never worked a minimum wage shift to cover a utility bill. The insulation is gone. The cold reality of the world has breached the walls. Brooke turns her head slowly. Her eyes track across the empty chairs, settling on me. The panic in her face shifts, molding into a familiar shape. She drops the hardened, vicious persona she used during the recorded phone call. She discards the spiteful sibling act. She pivots, slipping effortlessly into the role of the helpless victim. Her eyes well up with fresh tears. Her lip trembles. Lucia, Brooke whispers, her voice cracking perfectly on the syllables. She takes a hesitant step forward, leaving her shattered phone on the carpet. Lucia. I have nowhere to live, she says, her tone pleading, carrying the desperate cadence of someone expecting an immediate rescue. You have $700,000. You have to help me. The heavy oak door clicks shut behind the federal agents and our parents. The hydraulic hinge hisses, sealing the room. The sprawling conference suite, designed to intimidate opponents and host multi-million-dollar corporate mergers, suddenly feels like a cavern. The morning sunlight continues to pour through the floor-to-ceiling windows, indifferent to the destruction that just occurred. Brooke stands near the far edge of the mahogany table. She looks at the empty chairs where Derek and Brenda sat less than 5 minutes ago. She looks down at the carpet where her smartphone lies face down, its screen fractured into a spider web of shattered glass. When she finally steps forward, the heel of her designer shoe crushes the broken phone against the floor. The crunching sound is sharp and loud in the quiet room. She stops just a few feet away from me. Her face is a study in freefall. The tears welling in her eyes right now are genuine. They are not the practiced theatrical tears she produced on the phone last Sunday when she tried to lure me into a verbal contract. These tears are born of pure, unadulterated panic. The protective layer of synthetic wealth she has worn since birth has been stripped away, leaving her exposed to a reality she does not possess the tools to navigate. Lucia, Brooke repeats, her voice trembling, dropping into a frantic, breathless rhythm. You have to help me. You have to. She raises her hands, gesturing nervously in the empty space between us. The registrar at the university needs the tuition payment by Monday morning, Brooke says, her words tumbling over each other. The leasing office for my apartment in Coral Gables sends the eviction warning on the 5th of the month. Dad always wired the funds directly from the corporate holding account. If that account is frozen by the government, my rent is going to bounce. The dealership handles the lease on the Range Rover. The bank is going to send a repossession agent to my parking garage. I have no credit history. I have no savings account in my own name. I have nowhere to go. She pauses to draw a ragged breath. A dark streak of mascara runs down her cheek, ruining the flawless makeup she applied this morning to look formidable. You have $700,000 sitting in a trust fund, Brooke pleads, her eyes wide and begging. You can pay for my apartment, you can cover the tuition until I graduate. Just write a check, Lucia. It is a fraction of what Grandpa left you. We are sisters. You cannot just leave me out on the street. I remain seated in my leather chair. I watch her unravel. There is a profound tragedy in looking at my younger sister and realizing she was engineered to fail. Brenda and Derek did not raise an independent human being. They raised a dependent accessory. They taught Brooke that consequences were something you could pay a lawyer to erase. When she failed a high school science class, Derek made a donation to the athletic department, and the grade was mysteriously amended. When she backed her car into a neighbor's retaining wall, Brenda paid the homeowners association to lose the security footage. Brooke learned very early that accountability is a concept reserved for the lower tax brackets. But conditioning does not absolve a person of their choices. Brooke is 20 years old. She is an adult. And when Derek and Brenda needed a pawn to execute their fraudulent conservatorship trap, Brooke did not hesitate to volunteer. I look at her shaking hands. I look at the ruined mascara. "You recorded our phone call," I say. The words are soft, but they strike her like a physical blow. Brooke flinches. She lowers her hands, her shoulders hunching inward. "I had to." Brooke stammers, her voice dropping to a defensive whisper. "Dad told me to put the phone on speaker. He told me to get you to admit that the trust was a family emergency fund. He said if I did not help him get the recording, he was going to take away my car and cancel my credit cards. I did not have a choice, Lucia. I was just doing what they told me to do." The excuse hangs in the air, hollow and weak. It is the defining anthem of the enabler. The enabler never takes ownership of the knife. They just hand the weapon to the person doing the stabbing and claim they were forced into it. Brooke did not care that Derek was planning to strip away my civil rights, seize my medical decisions, and drain my grandfather's money. She did not care that her parents were targeting my nursing license. She only cared about preserving her own comfort. She traded my autonomy for a car lease. "You always had a choice," I tell her, my voice carrying a steady, grounded weight. "You chose to be the bait." "But I am your sister," Brooke cries, stepping closer, her face twisting in anguish. "You are supposed to protect me." Society places a heavy, suffocating burden on siblings. We are told from a young age that we must tolerate any level of betrayal because we share the same DNA. We are expected to act as eternal safety nets for people who refuse to learn how to walk on a tightrope. But true protection does not mean shielding a person from the consequences of their own complicity. True protection sometimes means letting the safety net break so they are forced to stand on their own feet. If I write a check to cover her luxury apartment and her private university tuition, I am not saving her. I am just replacing Derek and Brenda as her financial host. I would become the new bank account she attaches herself to, continuing the cycle of entitlement and dependency. She would never learn how to budget a minimum wage paycheck. She would never learn the dignity of earning her own survival. The $700,000 Grandpa Leo left me is not an emergency fund for a collapsed federal fraud ring, I say. And it is not a slush fund to maintain a lifestyle you can no longer afford. Brooke stares at me. The realization that I am not going to open my checkbook hits her. The panic in her eyes hardens into a familiar, resentful glare. "You are going to let me lose everything," Brooke whispers, her tone shifting from pleading to bitter. "You already lost it," I reply simply. "The money was never yours to begin with. It was stolen from out-of-state banks. You are just waking up to the reality the rest of the world lives in." I place my hands on the armrests of the leather chair and push myself up. I stand tall, smoothing the front of my navy blazer. I reach down and pick up my purse from the floor. The heavy cream envelope resting inside the bag feels like an anchor grounding me to the truth Leo left behind. I look at my sister one last time. She is standing alone in a rented conference room, surrounded by the wreckage of a fake empire. "I love you, Brooke," I say quietly, infusing the words with finality. "But I will not fund your complicity. You need to learn how to survive on your own." I do not wait for her response. There is nothing left to debate. I turn to Victoria Reyes. The attorney is already standing, her black binder tucked securely into her sleek leather briefcase. She gives me a single, respectful nod. We walk side by side toward the frosted glass doors. I pull the heavy oak door open and step out into the long, muted corridor. I do not look back over my shoulder. I let the door glide shut behind me, the hydraulic hinge clicking into place, sealing the room and leaving Brooke standing alone in the silence. We ride the elevator down to the lobby without speaking. The descent feels remarkably fast. We cross the polished marble floor and step out through the revolving glass doors into the bright, blinding heat of the Florida afternoon. The air is thick and humid, but for the first time in a week, my lungs expand fully. The weight on my chest is gone. The siege is over. 3 weeks later, the notification arrives on my phone. It is a quiet Tuesday morning. I am sitting at a small kitchen table in a new, sunlit apartment in Tampa. I open the banking application. The screen loads, displaying a pristine ledger. The transfer from the Delaware Fiduciary Bank has officially cleared. The balance reads $700,000. The account holds only one name: mine. The notification on my banking application is just a string of digital numbers, but it carries the weight of a severed chain. $700,000. It sits in a pristine account under a single name. There are no joint signers. There are no corporate attachments. The money is sterile, safe, and entirely mine. 2 days after the funds clear, the Tampa General Hospital Human Resources Department calls my personal phone. Diane, the director, who suspended me in a beige office just a few weeks prior, asks me to come in. She uses a tone that is remarkably soft, stripped of all its corporate authority. Gregory Vance delivered the signed retraction letter precisely at 4 o'clock on the day of the mediation. Faced with the threat of federal witness tampering charges, the chief of staff confessed to fabricating the medical affidavit and the narcotics diversion report. I walk back into the hospital through the main sliding doors. I do not wear my scrubs. I wear a tailored linen dress and flat shoes. The walk down the administrative hallway feels different this time. The temperature is the same, the industrial carpet is the same, but the power dynamic has fundamentally shifted. I am no longer a target dodging a professional execution. I am a woman holding all the leverage. Diane hands me a thick envelope containing a check for my accumulated back pay. She offers a rehearsed apology on behalf of the hospital administration, assuring me that the internal record has been expunged and my nursing license remains spotless. She slides a reinstatement form across her desk, expecting me to sign it and return to the trauma bay for my next scheduled night shift. I look at the reinstatement form. The emergency room was my sanctuary for years. It was the place where I hid from the chaos of my family by immersing myself in the physical trauma of strangers. It gave me a purpose when my parents gave me nothing but anxiety. But standing in this office holding the check for my back pay, I realize I no longer need a place to hide. The war is over. I survived. I reach into my purse, pull out a single sheet of paper I typed the night before, and place it gently on top of the reinstatement form. It is my formal letter of resignation. I thank Diane for the back pay turnaround and walk out of the hospital for the last time. I do not look back. With my reputation spotless and my autonomy secured, I turn my attention to the shield my grandfather left me. Leo did not want me to hoard the trust fund in a savings account. He built a marina from a single wooden dock. He believed in constructing things that could weather a storm. So I take a portion of the capital and sign a commercial lease on a sunlit ground floor retail space overlooking the water in downtown Tampa. I spend the next 4 months building my own practice. I hire contractors, select equipment, and interview staff. I do not open a boutique clinic for the wealthy elite. I open a pediatric physical therapy center. I want to help kids build their strength from the ground up, teaching them how to find their balance when their bodies betray them. I oversee every detail of the construction. When the painters finish the exterior, the sign above the glass doors reads, Leo Memorial Therapy. It is a quiet tribute to the man who taught me how to read contracts and recognize predators. While I am building a future in Tampa, the facade in Boca Raton systematically dismantles itself. Federal justice does not move with the swift, dramatic flair of a television show. It grinds forward like a glacier, slow, cold, and inescapable. Derek Cooper does not go to trial. A federal trial would require his former business partners to testify in open court, exposing the deepest layers of the wire fraud conspiracy. Faced with an overwhelming mountain of documentary evidence, forged titles, and the forensic accountant files Victoria Reyes handed to the FBI, Derek takes a plea deal. He pleads guilty to 2 counts of federal wire fraud. The judge sentences him to 74 months in a minimum security federal correctional institution in the Florida Panhandle. There are no linen suits in federal prison. There are no catered lunches or imported watches. Derek is reduced to a uniform and an inmate number stripped of the synthetic prestige that defined his entire existence. Brenda manages to avoid federal prison time by cooperating with the prosecution and claiming ignorance of the technical loan structures despite her signature on the tax documents. But avoiding a cell does not save her from the consequences of her choices. The federal government seizes the remaining assets to pay restitution to the defrauded banks. The 4-bedroom house in Boca Raton is auctioned off. The luxury SUVs are loaded onto repossession trucks. The social fallout is far more severe than any legal penalty for a woman like my mother. The Pinecrest Country Club revokes her membership within 24 hours of the arrest. The women she gossiped with, the charity board members she manipulated, drop her name from their contacts overnight. High society is ruthless to those who lose their capital. Today, Brenda Cooper rents a small 1-bedroom apartment near a strip mall. She works 40 hours a week at a cosmetics counter in a high-end department store. She spends her days spraying perfume samples on cardstock and ringing up purchases for the exact same wealthy socialites she used to host for Sunday brunch. She is forced to smile, offer them polite compliments, and hand them their receipts. For a woman whose entire worldview was built on projecting superiority, standing behind a retail register serving her former peers is a daily relentless humiliation. As for Brooke, the safety net dissolved exactly as promised. Forced to face the reality of a frozen bank account, she had to withdraw from the private university in Miami. She moved into a cramped apartment with 3 roommates and enrolled in a local community college. She works the breakfast shift at a local cafe to cover her half of the utility bills. I hear this through distant mutual acquaintances. We do not speak. The silence between us is a boundary I enforce to protect my own peace. She is learning how to survive the hard way, but at least she is finally learning. It is late October now. The oppressive summer humidity has finally broken, leaving behind a crisp, cool evening breeze. I am standing on the wooden deck behind my clinic. The sliding glass doors are locked for the night. The therapy mats are sanitized and stacked. The waiting room is dark and quiet. I lean against the wooden railing and look out over the water. The Florida sun is sinking low on the horizon, casting a brilliant streak of burnt orange and deep violet across the surface of the Gulf. The water ripples gently against the concrete seawall. It smells like salt and evening tide, a scent that always reminds me of my grandfather. My phone buzzes in the pocket of my cardigan. I pull it out and glance at the illuminated screen. It is a group text message from Helen Maria and Sarah, the nurses, who packed my boxes and stood by me when the hospital turned its back. They are sitting at a corner table at a local seafood restaurant 10 minutes away, demanding to know how long it will take me to lock up the clinic and join them for dinner. I smile, typing a quick reply, telling them to order me a glass of wine because I am on my way. I slide the phone back into my pocket and take one last look at the sunset. For the first 26 years of my life, I believed that loyalty was a biological obligation. I believed that you had to suffer the toxicity of your relatives because blood required sacrifice. I allowed myself to be diminished, manipulated, and hunted by the people who were supposed to be my safe harbor. But standing here on the deck of a business I built with my own hands, breathing the cool evening air, the true meaning of my grandfather's gift comes into perfect focus. Leo did not leave me $700,000 so I could buy a nicer car or upgrade my apartment. He gave me a weapon to sever the chains. He gave me the resources to hire a tactical genius like Victoria Reyes. He gave me the financial leverage to stand in a conference room with federal agents and look my abusers in the eye without blinking. I did not just win a legal battle, I surgically removed a cancer from my life. The greatest inheritance my grandfather left me was not the balance in my bank account. It was the absolute unshakable freedom to walk away from people who do not know how to love. My name is Lucia Cooper. I survived the ambush. I built my fortress, and I am exactly where I am supposed to be. If this story meant something to you, or if you are currently sitting at a table with family members who view you as nothing more than an asset to be drained, I want you to hear this. You do not owe anyone your sanity. You do not owe anyone your silence. Drop a comment below and tell me the moment you realized you had to cut the cord to save yourself. Subscribe to the Hazel Tells Stories channel and check the description for more stories about people who refused to fold when the pressure was on. I will see you in the next video.